Thank you. Ms. Gruhl.
Thank you, Mr. President. And, you know, when we talk about good jobs, it means good business. When you talk about good business and good jobs, it means a better quality of life for all of us, and it means changing people's lives. And many of us were there on Monday night. Kelly Kendall, who did a documentary on union jobs and the importance of that and the training that goes into that and the changing of lives of people who were previously in gangs. And I think Jan and James, who were the two people who spoke here today, you are a true testament to why this is so important. And yes, give them a great round of applause. And Cecilia's right. The first speaker, just by chance to be the Central City Association, who is not always in agreement with some of the things we're talking about on these issues, was here in support. And it demonstrates that the commission and the staff and the representatives from union work together to bring a PLA that everyone could work with. And I think this is just the beginning of that opportunity. And if we invest in our people and our residents and those that are here and our young people when they have options, where Brad Carson and I met when they were building Playa Vista and the importance of PV jobs and the people that he brought to the table, and the look on the faces of those young men in the video that we saw, this or movie that we saw on Monday night, was truly worth $1 million to all of us. And to see their lives changed and to see their relationships with their kids because they had a good job and could afford the niceties of having a home and feeling a sense of responsibility. That's what this is all about. A lot of people don't know what a PLA is, but what a PLA is are these men and women that are sitting here today and what you're able to do. And I'm proud to support this and to look forward, as Ms. Hahn has mentioned, the other areas of the city where we're going to work together. And it is a partnership. And you can be for unions and you can be for business, right, but most of all, you're for these men and women who are here. And I'm proud to stand with all of you today. Congratulations on this today. Thank you very much.
Mr. Parks.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would just like to ask a couple of questions because I think this is something that the community I represent have been looking forward to for a long while. They were very excited about CRA areas and then were disappointed when they didn't see them produce what they thought they were going to produce. The projects that come in, they're concerned as to seeing job crews come in. They're not hired, or if they're hired as laborers, and the job leaves and the crews leave. For the public, because I think people in this room have an understanding of it, but for the general public, what I'd like you to kind of go over is the coordinator position. How is that going to function? Because that's the key as to how local people are going to get hired. I think the public needs to know how that's going to work, so there's a clear understanding that this is a viable program and that they have an opportunity to have a person coordinating this at a local level.
Thank you, Councilmember Parks. The broad outlines of the policy is that whenever CRA puts in $1 million or more in subsidy into a project, that 30% of the construction work hours must go to local people. Local people.
Yeah, explain local people for
Local
us.
people would be within 3-mile radius of a CRA project area, or also within high unemployment zip codes in the city of Los Angeles. So that would be zip codes that have an unemployment rate higher than 7%. And we have provided a map showing exactly where that is. So it's really going to be covering low-income areas that have barriers to employment. 10% of all work hours must go to local low-income people. And these are the folks who have barriers to employment, like one of the speakers, people who may have had a run-in with the criminal justice system, maybe single parents, may not have a high school diploma. They have a variety of barriers to employment who might not otherwise have access to union apprenticeship programs. We then have jobs coordinators who are community-based organizations who will get these individuals ready to go into an apprenticeship program and able to benefit from this program. So Brad Carson and the PV Jobs program that Councilwoman Gruhl spoke of is one of these types of groups that makes folks job ready, gives them the skills, upgrades their skills, gives them the GED, helps them know how it is to get up in the morning and be on time for work, gets them ready to be in a union apprenticeship program, and makes them eligible to work on a CRA project. So 10% of all work hours must be these individuals, folks who would not otherwise be in an apprenticeship program.
Okay. Let me just ask, are the community coordinators going to be locally based?
That's correct. We've already pre-qualified 13 from all over the city. We have in South Los Angeles, we have the Urban League, I think.
UAW Workforce Center, Century Training.
We can't hear you.
I'm sorry, UAW Workforce Center, Century Training, and a number that work citywide as well.
Correct. So some of these are workforce centers, others are like PV Jobs, which have a terrific track record in pre-qualifying folks in South Los Angeles.
Okay. And I think one of the most important things you said about the apprentice, could you just repeat that and how apprentice gets them into a career?
The way this works is, using groups like UJCC and their constituent groups, there will be a pipeline of these folks who have barriers into employment. We're going to be working with the faith-based community to get them into these job-ready, skills-ready program. They will be able to get their GED. They'll learn algebra and geometry. They'll learn all of the basic life skills they need to succeed in the apprenticeship program. And once they graduate, those groups will send them on to an apprenticeship program, and they will be used on CRA projects. That's the whole purpose of this, is to get these folks who would not otherwise be able to work on a construction site and have a construction career, get them into the pipeline of a middle-class job via the union apprenticeship program.
Okay. And then explain to us how CRA is going to monitor the PLAs and maybe how they will be enforced, and maybe Mr. Reamer would be involved with that.
We never believe in reinventing the wheel. We have a wonderful expertise here in the city's own Bureau of Contract Administration that has been monitoring the city's PLAs, for example, the PLA on the construction of the LAPD headquarters and the Tom Bradley International Airport. So we are contracting with the Bureau of the Contract Administration, Mr. John Reamer, to monitor our program. John, you want to say a few words?
Good morning. We have a fantastic relationship not only with the CRA, but with the building trades. And we coined a phrase, LIGHT. This is all about lifting individuals, giving hope today. And as you've seen by several of the speakers, that this provides hope. It reinstills hope in the members of our community, and that's what this is all about. We believe that an hour is an opportunity. Let me give you an example of how this not can work, but this does work. Currently in the Department of Public Works, we have 7 active project labor agreements. And what that means is that we entered into an agreement with the building trades and the contractors to ensure that we have a level playing field. Every contractor that bids on our work, and the same will happen with CRA, will bid on a level playing field. And that's what the building trades have always asked for. They haven't asked to be treated any differently than anyone else. They just want to be able to come in and bid on a level playing field. In the month of September of '07, we had 194,000 hours that were worked by men and women who live in the city of Los Angeles. As of March of this year, that number increased just with 7 project labor agreements from 194,000 hours to 384,000 hours. So this is not something that might work. This is not something that can work. This will work. And it's going to work with the partnership, with all of you, with the men and women that are behind us. There is a commitment here citywide to make this happen, as it has been alluded to, not just with the CRA, but we are in negotiations on 2 other project labor agreements, because we believe that this is just good business. It makes sense. Of those 7 project labor agreements that I alluded to, we spoke to reinvestment. $13.35 million have now been invested back into men and women who live in this city to spend in our communities and not go someplace else. So this is just good business sense.
Okay, let me just ask, so many times in the years past we have these numbers that we're throwing around. How are you tracking them to be so specific as to number of hours? And I think you keep track by name of individual?
Zip code.
Yeah, thank you for asking. 2 things. The Bureau of Contract Administration and the Department of Public Works, we are the city's state labor compliance program, and Manny Perez is our labor compliance officer. And what that means is that we have been authorized by the state of California to monitor all construction projects to ensure that the men and women who work on projects that are being funded by public monies are paying what's called a prevailing wage. They give us, on a regular basis, they being the contractor, certified payrolls. We use those certified payrolls to identify who the workers are, where they live, how much they're being paid, the classification they're working in. Another thing that we're in the process of doing right now is there is an assembly bill that is going through the process, AB 2369. We are asking the state of California to allow us to partner with them so that we can have the authority, we already have the ability, but the authority to enforce apprenticeship requirements that are state mandated. 20% of all hours worked on public finance projects should go to apprentices. So the council asked the department, put together an apprenticeship program. This is what we've done. It's working fantastically well. If I can put a plug in right now, all of your support for AB 2369 will greatly be appreciated. The building trades have done a tremendous job in supporting us on this, and it affords us the opportunity to know who's working and when they're working, how many hours they've worked, and whether or not they're being paid properly. If we find that a contractor is not paying an employee properly, and I'm going to say that happens with the building trades, doesn't it? If we find that that happens, then we meet with the contractor to make sure that any monies that should have been paid to the employee are paid to that employee. It's called restitution. If that does not happen, then we are empowered by the state to penalize that contractor. Those monies do come to the city. We try to avoid that. Manny Perez likes to say we don't want their money. We want the money to go to the men and women who work. The underground economy has been thrown around this morning in discussions. It is real. Unfortunately, it is alive and well in the city of Los Angeles. So programs like ours to ensure that we stamp that out so that when men and women work, they are paid properly is what we do, and that's how we're going to monitor this. On a monthly basis, on our website, we have a report for every project under a project labor agreement. The CRA projects will be a part of that for all of you to see, because we believe that transparency and clarity is key. The community will be able to see exactly who is working, how many hours are being worked, which contractors are complying and which ones are not. And this is all about making us all come together and fix the problems that we see in our society.
Let me ask this.
And we'll have to have this be the last question.
Cecilia, let me ask one other question, is that how often will you report back to us on the compliance to this ordinance?
Offered in the ordinance.
In the policy, we'll be reporting back to our board, I think on an annual basis, on our progress made, and certainly we can forward that report right on to council.
Okay. Certainly would like to ask that as far as this ordinance, and certainly are very supportive of it, I think the issues that my community asked me about have been covered, about the apprenticeships, the local hire. The reason that we help fund PV jobs is just because of this. But we'd like to ask, if I can ask a friendly amendment to this, that we get a report back annually so the council's aware of the progress, because we've had a lot of great programs in the past on paper. They just fizzled when they became operational, and I think the community deserves to have this kind of operational program.
We would welcome that. Thank you, Councilmember.
Thank you, Mr. Parks. Mr. Rosendahl is our next speaker, and then Mr. LeBons is our last speaker.
I don't want to take too much time, but I want to say three things. Pipe fitters, thanks for being in Washington, doing what you did there. You were 3,000 strong. You hit that Congress harder than we did, which was the business community and the mayor and I. Great. Appreciate that. Very good. Excellent. The best. Secondly, since I've been an elected official, which is 2 years and 9 months, but who's counting, I have carried this cup with me everywhere. And why? Because homeboys is jobs. You know, you want to get a kid out of a gang, you give him a job, you give him education, you give him training. That's why I carry this cup.